myself some coffee, cook the kids some breakfast. Man, my life is hectic, but the only thing that I can seem to think about is you. People always asking, what would Jesus do? I guess that everybody else is thinking about you too. All around the world, what they talk about is you. Drive me crazy if I didn't hold your hand. Cause no matter where I go, I never, ever, ever go without you. Woo. I just couldn't do it, no, I wouldn't get through it. Trying to rock without you's like an engine with no fluid. I crash and I burn and I die without you.
The Nicole Mason Show, a show where we feature phenomenal women who are using their gifts, talents, and skills to impact the world. And today is like no other. I say that every week when we come together because it is the truth. Every week is going to be something different. Another powerful woman who is doing some phenomenal work as it relates to her giftings and her skills. And today, I certainly want to introduce and present to some one of my guests who was with me at the end of last year. And I told her then that she would definitely have to come back to talk about this subject separate and apart from what we were talking about at the end of the year. And at that time, the show was focusing on finishing strong, how to finish and finish strong. Today, this month, as you know, is Sexual Assault Awareness Month. And so we want to discuss her book today, and we'll get into that after I do this introduction so that you'll know who you have in your midst. Somebody that's wonderful, somebody that's powerful, and somebody that's highly anointed to do this work. So let me introduce my special guest today, Dr. Pamela Love Manning, a.k.a. Dr. Pam Love, is a certified professional coach, educator, inspirational speaker, and one of the leading experts on the science of finishing. She is the founder of the Finishers Network, an organization that helps individuals and organizations finish what they start and achieve favorable outcomes. The network offers training, coaching services, personal and professional development products, administrative consulting, program evaluation, and mental health services through partnerships with subject matter experts. Dr. Love Manning is the author of 3 books, which she wrote in 30 days or less. It's all about love, living your purpose in spite of your past. I Want My Vagina Back. That's the book we'll be focusing on today. And learning to love yourself from the inside out. And the co-author of Life Happens, But You Can Finish. She also developed an iPhone app called Dump Your Date, which helps women make values-driven dating decisions. Recently, stories from her second book were performed by celebrities at the Atlanta Black Theater Festival. Dr. Love Manning is a highly sought-after speaker who has presented locally and nationally for a variety of organizations. She has participated on panels or as a featured author with numerous individuals, including Dr. Iyanla Vanzant, former U.S. Surgeon General Jocelyn Elders, Dr. Alduin Tart, and Tammy Roman of Basketball Wives. She has been interviewed on numerous radio programs and has been a featured expert on Fox 5's Ask Allison segment in Washington, D.C. Dr. Love Manning has a bachelor's in applied psychology from Coppin State College and an MSW and PhD from the University of Maryland. She has also received specialized training in human resource services, temperament analyses, smart thinking, I like that, rewiring the brain for joy, the law of attraction, and a solution-focused therapeutic coaching model for individuals and organizations. This just means she is so deep, people. Dr. Love Manning has received numerous awards and recognitions from state and local officials and numerous organizations. She is the past chair of the Development Foundation Board of Coppin State University and is on the board of directors for the University System of Maryland Foundation. Dr. Love is a member of civic and social organizations. She and her husband reside in Maryland. They have 3 adult children and 1 grandson that is the apple of her eye, I'm certain. So help me welcome today Dr. Love Manning. Hey!
Hello.
How are you?
Great. Thank you so much for having me on the show today.
Listen, it's going to be a great show today. I just want to say a thank you for coming back to share with us. And one of the things that I want the people to know, this is one of the most beautiful spirits that I have ever met. Her spirit is just so awesome. And, you know, she's what I would call a quiet storm. I love that, you know, because folk who know me, you know, I'm just like the storm, you know. And she is just a quiet storm, very powerful, very wise woman. And so we wanted to come back today in honor of Sexual Assault Awareness Month and talk about this phenomenal book. Now, I have to tell the audience, when we first met last year, a year before, time goes so quickly, we were at one of Dr. Vicky's dance parties and just having a good time, you know, the spirit of dance and rhythm. Hey, Dr. Vicky. And the moment that she said, I want Nicole, I want you to meet Dr. Pam. she wrote a book called I Want My Vagina Back. And immediately I'm like, oh, girl, I have got to read that book. Now, I'm a person, I buy books based on the title. And so for me, as soon as she said that to me, I knew I needed to read that book. And so I wanted to bring you on today during this month because I personally think it is a very powerful book. And I want you to talk about how you came up with this concept to bring these women together, to talk about something so intimate and sometimes very vile. But it's something that is needed. It's a conversation that's desperately needed. And you and I were joking when we were walking in just about, some of the response,
Yes.
Or the lack thereof.
Yes, right.
And we expect that. So let's get started.
Okay.
So talk about how you came up with this concept.
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you so much, Nicole, for inviting me to be a part of the show. It is really an honor. It really. I've watched you. You have some phenomenal guests on here, so I feel special. I really
are special.
Thank you. And so, regarding the title of this book, this particular book was the result of a conversation that I was having with a lady one night, and she was complaining about the father of her sons. And she said, sometimes men get on my nerves so much that I want to go and knock on some doors and say, I want my vagina back. And it was almost as if I had this visual image, and I thought, me too, and I could see myself going with this basket, walking around literally, because I was hearing so many stories of women who had sexual encounters, and 20, 30, 40 years later, they were still suffering socially, physically, financially. There were so many effects. And so that title stuck with me for about 2 years. Fast forward, I was having a conversation with Elder Kevin Matthews, my pastor, and he's, we were talking about me doing some other things with my first book. And I said, Elder, I have a title for a book, but that's all I have. And he said, what is it? And I said, I Want My Vagina Back. And he put his head down, he looked up and smiled and said, you have to write that book.
Right.
You have to write that book. And so for me, it was a matter of hearing many stories of women. I was tired of seeing women. I had my own story. And I talk a little bit about it in the book, but I was tired of seeing women suffering many years later. And so the idea for the book was if there could be a conversation starter, because many of our mothers didn't talk about sex.
Absolutely.
Right? Some of you may have had that experience.
Absolutely.
Your parents didn't talk about. Mothers said, they just said, don't do it.
Absolutely.
Well, what did that mean? Or you better not go out there and get pregnant, right?
Right.
So for many of us, we didn't have those conversations. And so I said, wow, if there was some way that we can have mothers talking to their daughters, grandmothers talking to their granddaughters, sisters talking to one another, so that we can minimize our regrets going forward. Because too many women have regrets already.
Yeah, and Eric, we have a copy of the book cover. Someone just texted and said they can't see the book because my banner is blocking it. But just the book cover alone is provocative. And, I say provocative because it provokes something in you. And I think it does provoke a conversation like, whoa, okay. And I think whenever you are a change agent for the Lord, you have to be bold in what you do.
Absolutely.
For me, this book is just that kind of book. And so when we start to have this conversation about, these encounters that women have, and some of them are voluntary, yes. And then there are many that have been chronicled in the book that were not voluntary.
That's right.
Where people, the women were violated and, really having to put your life together or back together after those kinds of assaults can really make women real, out of control.
That's right.
And you see all these different kinds of behaviors. So let's talk a little bit about what has transpired since writing this book in terms of the conversations and some of the workshops and all of that have taken place.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting, as you talked about the cover, there are many people who have been resistant. They see the cover and they say, woo. Now, honestly, if I was the one to select the cover, this would not have been the cover, because I tend to be a little more conservative. But from a marketing perspective, it really captivates people. So when they see the title, they say, I want my vagina back. Where did it go? Why did you give it away? So it begins to cause people to think. So since releasing this book, I've had many conversations with small groups in churches, lots of organizations, training programs for youth. I've found out that all across the country, people are using this book. I was at an event just recently, and a lady came up to me and said, oh my gosh, we're using your book at Kane University in New Jersey. She said, we've been using it. And so what it has done is started conversations and had women to really start taking an honest look at their behavior. Because the book does more than just cause you to have conversations. But at the end of the book, I really encourage women to think about their value. So it's how do you see your value, but also what are your core values? If you align your values with your actions, I believe you minimize your regrets.
That's tweetable.
Tweet it. Yeah.
Yes, tweetable.
Yeah, you really do. And the thing that I was consistently seeing as I would talk to women, if you would ask them, what are your top 3 to 5 core values? Couldn't tell me. Without some prompting. Oh, yeah. And I said, okay, so what helps you to make decisions when it comes to your sexual behavior? What helps you to think about when to say yes when you want to say no? And that's so at the end of each chapter are questions.
Right.
What's the value of your vagina to you? If you had to put a price tag on it, would it be a thrift store, a giveaway, or is it priceless?
Wow.
So it's those kinds of thought-provoking questions that really make women say, I had to think about that. And women will say, you know what, at any given point in my life, it was a thrift store. It was a coupon. You know, you just buy me dinner.
Jesus.
And you could have your way. So it's really about helping women to begin to think of their value differently. I give you an example. I often will ask audiences, I say to women, tell me something of value to you. What's something important to you? And so I say something that you've purchased. So they'll say ring, their car. I said, okay, got it. So let's use the example of the car. So if you bought a car and you love this car and you meet a guy for the first time, you go out with him maybe second or third time and he looks and says, I love that car. Oh my God, you got to give me that car. I want that car. Got to have that car. Would you give him that car? Most of the time people,
they're like, no.
Right. They look at you saying, are you kidding me? I said, but why are we so quick to open our legs? Because that which we value, we will preserve and protect.
Wow. And so what are some of the responses when you have this kind of conversation? Because that imagery is just so plain. Yeah.
That's right.
You wouldn't give him the car, so why would you give him yourself?
Right.
And I think I had a lovely young woman on last month, at the end of last month, coming into this month, Angela Wharton, and she's doing some great work around this same subject area. She has written a book. It's called Life After Silence. And we were talking about some of the red flags that have happened in our lives. And, unless you really take the time to analyze your behavior, which this book is, prompting women to really think about it, you really cannot connect the dots. Right. You have to take the time to analyze, point A and point B and how they are connected.
That's right. And that's the challenge. I think we have to do a better job of talking to our young girls sooner. We have to do a better job of having these conversations sooner so that we can become clear about our value. We aren't clear. We just allow people to define who we are. And so we go through life, we're not clear about our core values. What's important to you? What's really important? So now when I make a decision about whether I'm going to accept a job, whether I'm going to go out with this particular person, now we have something, some frame of reference. But if you don't have that, you just make decisions and you're influenced by others. We've got to become clear. So, even as believers, we say we value God, we love God, but does our behavior line up with that?
Yeah, that deserves a whole nother show. That deserves a whole nother show.
Yeah, that's right.
But I hear you, and I just thought about that when you talked about, even taking a job. And I remember I did this whole series on, in my ministry on, knowing your value, knowing your worth. And, just really how it all, if you don't know, it ends up in every aspect of your life. Not just in your relationships, but in your job.
That's right.
And asking for what you think you're worth in terms of your salary, in terms of the bonuses.
That's right.
All of those things. How you interact with people, the kind of behavior you will accept, and not just from a man.
No, that's right.
But the kind of behaviors you will accept. And then when you do take a stand, because the world is so used to not for the most part, then you become like an outcast. Like, what's really wrong with her?
Right. That's right. Yeah.
No.
That's right.
No. When I value myself, I value my space, and you just can't come into my space and treat me any kind of way.
That's right.
And think that it's okay.
That's right.
No, I can take a stand, and I can choose whom I let in my space and who is not allowed in my space.
That's
It's
right.
just that simple.
Yeah.
But I think you're absolutely dead on when you start to talk about knowing the value and really having these kinds of conversations early on. I remember in my own childhood, my mother would call her bedroom the parlor, Come in the parlor so we can have these conversations. And, she would have some deep conversations with me. Of course, coming up, I didn't always appreciate them, but I knew it was for a reason. But she was very adamant on me understanding my worth, my value, how people would treat me or not if I allowed it. She was very big on you don't just allow people to treat you any kind of way. You teach them how to treat you by the way you treat yourself.
That's right. Yes.
So those are kind of powerful lessons. But something is missing.
Yeah. And let me just piggyback on something you just said. Words are powerful. So think about this for a second. One of the things you asked about talking to different women and all, it's very interesting how many women are uncomfortable using the word vagina. Right? So we were taught to call it all kinds of other things. So you will say hair, you will say nails, you'll say knees, you'll say all that. But so why won't you say vagina? So growing up, my mother used to say, or I guess when my children were young and my mom they would be over there, my mom would say, Nicole, make sure you wash your pocketbook. Glenn, make sure you wash your buggy. No, it's a penis. It's a vagina. If you think about it, even the commercials are just beginning to start using the word vagina. So words are empowering. So what happens when you begin to take away, when you teach someone that it's not good, don't say these things, what messages does that send to us? So we've not been taught to value ourselves. We've not been taught to protect our vagina. We've been taught to just allow others to determine how it's used and what happens to it.
Wow.
Women won't even look at the vagina.
Right.
But you will go into a GYN office, or you'll let some man, somebody else put their face in, right, and look and know and probe and do things to you, and you don't even know your own body.
Well, that's so true, because I remember when I was pregnant with my first son, and I went to stay with my aunt in Philadelphia for a couple of weeks, and we were just talking about it because my grandmother, she was just so ashamed that I was pregnant. Like, Grandma, oh, God, she was just so ashamed. So she sent me off to Philadelphia to stay with my aunt. And so my aunt and I were having just a very candid conversation, because my grandmother came from that generation, where you needed to be married and that kind of thing. And at the time I wasn't, But I remember my aunt telling me that she had never seen her own vagina. I remember her telling me. She was grown, and the lady at her job, she worked at Campbell Soup Company for many years. She retired from Campbell Soup Company. But the lady at her job said to her, well, Mary, you have this and that down there. She's like, what? She's like, oh, I didn't know I had two things down there. This is how she's talking to me. And I'm sitting there like incredulous. Because I began to understand, what I was dealing with my grandmother, because she just wasn't comfortable with this whole notion of sex and, all of that.
Yes.
And so those kinds of conversations, or the lack thereof, really lead us to make some of the choices that we make.
They do. They do. We do things in private because we don't have those private conversations. So we will do things, and then we don't tell people, and we think, okay, it's okay, let me just do this, but I won't tell anybody, So we do a lot of things in private, but we need to have private conversations about ourselves. We need to know ourselves and stop allowing others to define who we are.
Yeah, that's powerful stuff. I tell you, and I think it's very important for us to have these kinds of conversations with the young ladies so that they will understand, and the young men to know that this is very natural. My grandmother, again, God rest her soul, she was a sweetie pie, but some of the things that you learn later on, that was just wrong. That just wasn't right, and not because,
Yes.
she was, trying to be wrong. It's just wrong, when you grow and you mature, and I had my son, it's very common for little kids to explore themselves. He's about 2. Well, she's like, something is wrong with him. You need to take him to the doctor. He shouldn't be doing that. And I remember taking him to the doctor, and the doctor looking at me like I was crazy. Now, she's at home. I'm the one taking him because, I'm young. I just had this baby. I'm trying to do the things right.
Right.
And so he was the one that set me down. He said, Nicole, this is very natural behavior.
Yes.
So, your grandmother, that's her stuff, whatever that is. Now, of course, I want to fight him at that point. Now, don't talk about my grandmother, But when we start to think about it and really start to have these kinds of conversations, to know that some of those things that, we heard and we were taught, they just were wrong.
They were.
Just like our kids will go on and then later on they'll say, well, that wasn't right.
That's right.
Because each generation we're teaching.
Yes. And I tell you something else that's come up with this book, to your point. We have been teaching other women how to be distrusting of men. Okay, and so we say men are dogs. All men are dogs. Men are going to cheat, right? So I covered that a little bit in the book, where it deals with how these messages that we give to one another. Oh, make sure you always have cab fare. You think about the messages that we share with one another that really set up for us this idea of I can't trust a man. And so going into a relationship, there's never going to be a faithful man, right? And that is so not true.
Right.
That's not true. And so what we do is then we think, well, he's not going to be faithful. Some women are encouraging women to be with married men. And so I say, you listen to the man because he says, well, things aren't working out and things are this, but covenant relationship, why are you interfering with that? And you're going to be disrespectful to another sister. You really don't know the story. How many women actually have a conversation with the man's wife?
Okay, everybody breathe. Breathe, take a deep breath. Okay, yes, we are going there.
That's right.
Now, that's deep.
Yeah. How many, because he says, I'm not with her, oh, she's doing this, but you don't know. And I've been on both sides, okay? Let me just, I've been on both sides as the woman who is with the man who's separated and claims the things, and it's wrong. I had to come to a conclusion. I don't care. You're separated. You're not divorced.
Absolutely.
It's wrong. And I went through that, but also being on the other side of being the woman who is crying and praying and turning around 3 times, believing that my marriage is going to be fine, right? While the other woman is being told all kinds of things about me that's not true.
Absolutely. I think we all have those stories, but at some point in time, when do you resolve that this is not the way that it should be?
Right.
And I'm talking about from a holistic perspective, not just for me personally, but the woman code. That no, this is not right. We should not be treating each other this way.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely.
Some
of this is about our thinking, and again, some of it is based on our experiences and what we've seen. Now, keep in mind that throughout history, women have used the vagina to make money as a means. There are times when, as African Americans, we couldn't even get married. Okay, so men and women live together. A lot of the things that we say, oh my gosh, this is so horrible. That's all they could do back then.
Right.
And so women wanted to survive, and so they used the vagina. And so there have been these messages that have been passed down to us. We have to learn how to value ourselves and to really look at what God says about us. There is an order and there is a way that is wonderful when we follow it. Now, when we don't, we need to understand there are consequences.
Right.
So, I say that we want to try to minimize those consequences so we can have fewer regrets. Because if we are doing things that are out of order, so here's what happens. We have intercourse with someone, we create an attachment. The world calls it soul ties.
Well.
Right? And so you're wondering why, you crazy, your mind is all messed up. There's a part of you. Think about it. If he ejaculates inside of you, where does that go? So some say, well, he used a condom and all that, but still, there's this connection. Even we know that, a man, when he kissed you, some of his testosterone, that's what causes us to start having feelings because of the saliva, the testosterone in the saliva. So it's not, it's not just that all of a sudden we're having these feelings and we can rebuke it away. It's physiological. There are a lot of things that are going on in the body that's causing us to respond. So we've got to understand that our action, as we value ourselves, as we align ourselves with what God wants us to do, we start making different decisions that are healthier for us. Because ultimately, some people are depressed. What's happening psychologically, if you are emotionally going through, it's going to show up physically. It's going to show up physically.
Okay, y'all breathing.
Breathe.
Yeah. I mean, and when you think about it, because, sex is very spiritual.
Yes.
It's very, very spiritual.
Yes.
It's very, very deep.
Yes.
So when you start talking about it from that point and start to break it down, and you then begin to take on the characteristics of the person that you've been with, good or bad.
That's right.
You try to figure that out.
That's right.
And, it's almost like you have to detoxify.
Yeah.
That's what I've called it over the years. You have to detoxify from those people whose hands you've been in.
That's right.
And, I guess I'm thinking to myself, whether it's voluntary or involuntary, it's the same kind of energy if you're not careful.
Absolutely. Yes. Those connections can be long lasting.
Right.
And there really are people who are psychologically just struggling and dealing with all kinds of things. You think about, when you are trusting of someone, right? That you say, I'm going to give myself to this person. And you've created a connection and he's able to walk away.
Right.
We understand that in the brain, women have 10 times the level of oxytocin in the brain than men do, which means we get this connection, warm, fuzzy feeling the same way that women, when you have children, that we have that same innate connection. And so what happens, we start getting connected to them. And so we're, oh, honey, when are you going to call me? They don't have that. So that's how it's easier for them to get up and walk away. They don't have the same attachment. So we are connecting ourselves in ways, it's not just physical. There are other things that, that's happened in our brain that's causing us to have this connection that can go on and on and on. And then and so you have this high. Oh, I've been with him. He's wonderful. And then he says, what? Call you? I just wanted to sleep with you.
Right.
And now you have this low, right? Because that intercourse can also help to release certain neurotransmitters. So you're getting this release of these chemicals in the brain that are good and exciting, and now it drops. You don't have that anymore.
Wow.
So we're really setting ourselves up in a lot of ways to do damage to ourselves. I call it emotional abuse. We really emotionally abuse ourselves.
And so whenever I have a good conversation, the time just seems like it's just running out too quickly. Okay, so what are some of the recommendations for, counteracting this high? Changing our behaviors so that we're living more healthy. And it's got to be more than just say no, because we know that has just not worked. No. Just say no, that has not worked.
Yeah.
So let's talk about some of the recommendations that you have provided. This book is excellent. I want you all to be sure to get this. So let's talk about, before we get into the recommendations, let's talk about how people can connect with you, Dr. Pam. And this is the time for you all to breathe, because some of the people, they're like holding their breath like, OMG. Are they having that kind of conversation on the Nicole Mason Show? Yes, we are. Because this show is about empowering women to do what's best for you so that you can become all that God has created you to be. And we all know women. We may have been there ourselves. ourselves where we just have not been able to rise to the occasion because of something that happened in our past or even something that's going on. We have full control over it, but if you don't analyze it and try to figure out what's causing me to keep going with this same joker, I said joker, that you know is a joker, and he keeps joking you, but you keep saying yes. So this is the reason that we have these kinds of conversations. So, Dr. Pam, let everybody know how they can connect with you and how they can get this book.
Yes. The book is available at Amazon. You can go to amazon.com and purchase the book. You can contact me by sending an email to drpamlove@gmail.com. Again, it's DRPAMLOVE, so drpamlove@gmail.com. Or you can call my office at 240-242-9555. Again, 240-242-9555.
And we'll be sure to put that on our website as well as our show page on Facebook. You can also connect with Dr. Pam on Facebook. She's on there. So tell them what's your handle?
Yes, you can go to Pamela Love Manning. That's my page on there. There's also an I Want My Vagina Back page on Facebook if you'd like to connect there.
Yeah, excellent. So let's talk about some of the recommendations that you have provided in these groups that you have been leading. And, you know, I know that this book is going to be a tremendous blessing to those who purchase it and really take the time to read it and study it. The first thing that you will find out is that you are not alone, because these women who have been chronicled in this book have all kinds of stories. I know you will see yourself in one or more of the stories. And so that's the first thing that you're going to be able to connect with, that, hey, I'm not alone. You know, sometimes, you meet women and they've been holding and harboring secrets, since childhood. And it's like, oh, gosh, because that's a weight, that's a burden. And these kinds of projects that are anointed, that are God-led, are here to help us break through.
Yes.
So please be sure to get your copy. So let's talk about some of the recommendations that you have provided.
I think the first thing is to be honest with yourself about how you feel, and not be so hard on yourself. We've all made mistakes at different points in our lives, and thank God, God is forgiving, right? Sometimes we are covering up those secrets because we don't want other people to know, because as you said, we think we're the only one, or how are people going to perceive us? And so it's so important to find someone who you can talk to, that you can trust. That's one of the first things that I would say, whether it's a therapist, whether it's a, someone in your church, but find a close friend, find someone that you can share the information with, because it is like a weight when you can release it. I've had 70, 80-year-old women say to me, oh my God, I've never told anyone that I was raped before, things. And it's like this weight that's lifted off of them because they've told it. Now, I also want to caution people that when you begin to tell your story, when you begin to deal with things that you've not told, you can start having negative emotions. It's almost like things start bubbling up to the surface. So when you start dealing with it, so that's why it's important to share it with someone you can trust, who's not going to judge you, but someone who can really walk with you to really help you resolve, particularly if you have really deep negative feelings.
And I think that's good. And that, one of the things about me, I've always said to people, Jesus plus counseling, you can't go wrong. And I think it's important, to find someone who is trained to help you walk through this, because some of these things that have happened to us as women, you can't get in on a Sunday morning service. Now, I am a church girl. I love church. I love to pray, all of those things. But I do also believe that God has allowed people to study the brain and study the functioning and the workings and the mechanics of the brain to be able to help us navigate trauma.
That's right.
Because it's really trauma.
Absolutely.
I was sharing with you, sharing with Dr. Pam on the way in. I had the opportunity to purchase a book from someone who just recently wrote her story. And it's a very powerful story. But I was sick into my stomach to read, that she had been subjected to sexual assault by her stepfather for years. And the mother didn't have a clue. Or the other thought that came to me as I was reading it, sometimes this stuff is so deep that you see it, but you don't.
That's right. Absolutely.
And that to me was even more sad.
That's right.
And what I think has happened to a lot of us generationally
Yes.
is that you see it, but you don't, because something in you does not want to believe that that is happening.
That's right.
That's the first thing. And then the second thing, you know, what I've found in talking with and coaching and mentoring women over these years is that, you know, you want to be able to work with it and handle it yourself. But if that were the case, things would be different.
Absolutely. And I give you an example of that. I didn't know, because of all that I had been through. I'd been molested. I'd been raped. There were lots of things that I'd gone through over the years, a lot of trauma. And it wasn't until I sat down with a therapist that she began to help me to realize how disconnected I was from my emotions. So there are many of us that can push forward and do things. We can go on and be successful in so many areas of our lives, but yet we're disconnected from our emotions, and that's unhealthy. So she said, wait a minute, you dissociate. And I said, what are you talking about? We don't know what we don't know. So that's where someone who has been trained can really begin to point out. Something else that she began, so as an example, you could pull my hair and I would act like it didn't hurt.
Wow.
So I knew how to put pain on the shelf over here and deal with what I needed to deal with. That's not healthy, okay? So the other thing that she began to show me was the ways in which the pain of my past was being reenacted in my present. So the things that had happened, I was attracting people into my life to reenact what I had not resolved. So if you look at the people in your life, I mean, this is really important. If you look at the people in your life, if you see things continuing to show up, sometimes subconsciously the brain is really trying to resolve those issues from the past. Something that your mother did, something that's a stepfather or something, you're trying to resolve that. And so you're actually attracting people to try to deal with that. So you think you can push it aside if you want and say, I don't want to deal with that. You are subconsciously dealing with it through the relationships that you're attracting.
Whew, yeah, that's deep stuff, and it's deep because it's very clear when you hear it.
Yeah.
But when you're in the midst of it,
That's right.
This is why we all need others to help us.
Yes.
We need people in our lives to be honest with us about what they see. And I was on a radio show a couple of weeks back, and I was just talking about this same kind of interaction about how we engage with each other. And, you know, the thought occurred to me how, you know, you can be in relationship with another woman and be honest with her. You know, she cries to you and, you know, about a joker, and you give her the right information, but yet she will cut the relationship with you
To be with him.
but continue to allow him to mistreat her. And, you know, I was just talking in that interview about just understanding the power of sisterhood and the power of relationship, that if I'm in a relationship with you, I'm not setting out to hurt you, but you will go run to the thing that is hurting you and cut off the thing that was sent to help you.
That's right.
And that to me was deep. That to me was deep because you have so many women who have gone through these kinds of situations that would be open and available to talk with the woman. But the thing is, it's not going to be easy.
No, it's not. And the other thing is that when we've experienced trauma, and this was the other thing that I didn't realize, you may have heard me say this, that when you've experienced trauma in your life, there can be arrested development. So if you've had a trauma at the age of 13 or something like that, then you may actually have arrested development, which means your brain has not developed in the way that it should have or could have. So you're talking to a 40-year-old woman who may be really psychologically 13.
Wow.
So as we better understand that, we can relate to people. So you say, oh, okay, when did the trauma start? I was 12 years old. Okay, how would you talk to a 12-year-old versus a 40-year-old? So now you've got to help them to work through that so that they can be free and that they can continue to develop. So they may not even have the capacity to be where you think they should be or to understand and move beyond. They're still stuck.
Yeah. That's powerful stuff. Listen, this is the lady you want to be in relationship with. This is the lady you want to be in contact with. I think one of the most powerful things, Dr. Pam, is when you have gone through what you've gone through and then come through that, worked on it, and I think it's important for people to understand and know that you've worked on it and not just try to work on it by yourself, but gone to seek out counsel, gone to seek out therapy, in addition to relationship with God, yes. All of that working in tandem. And then furthering your education to really understand and really take all of that and make it such a wonderful ministry and business to help other women. I think that's powerful. This is the woman that you want to be engaged with. I had her to come and do a workshop for me for our Few chapter at my job. And I just remember when we talked about I was just reading your bio. And just the title of this book, it was like a gasp in the room. But the women were so engaged. And your coaching group was the largest coaching group that we had. And I believe that was for that very reason, that, wow, if she's bold enough to write a book with that kind of title, and then she's bold enough to have the kind of conversations that we had right there in that conference room, the ladies were just seeking out the wisdom and seeking out the care and the concern. And so I want to encourage you today, if you are one of our listeners and you have had some kind of trauma, or you know that you've made some bad decisions, and not all encounters are traumatic. Some of them are very voluntary. You just fell into the wrong hands. And so if that's you, I want you to connect with Dr. Pam. She has an awesome ministry, an awesome business, where she utilizes all of this wisdom to help women get a breakthrough. And so, Dr. Pam, I think one of the other things, too, that I wanted to have you expound upon is, how do women who find themselves in abusive relationships, who are still in those relationships, how do they navigate this behavior and where they find themselves in a way that is healthy and, they can come out of it alive?
Yeah, absolutely. When women find themselves in abusive relationships, it's so important to develop a plan. Sometimes we say, just get out, just leave. It's not that simple.
Right.
And there can be that cycle of abuse that occurs. You go through that period where people, oh, I love you so much and all of that. Or they have sex with them and make them feel good, and so now they're back in the place, well, it's going to be okay. They become hopeful. And so I think it's really important to have someone that you can trust and that can help you to really develop a solid safety plan, but a plan for you to get out of that relationship. And that can involve counseling, needing to get the help, the psychological assistance that you need to be able to walk away and be able to stay away from this relationship when it's unhealthy. Even if you're not in an abusive relationship, all relationships aren't healthy for you.
Right.
And so how do you walk away from that? Why are you attached to this relationship? Sometimes it is generational stuff that's going on that we maintain these connections. And so having an accountability partner can be really helpful. So when you, just as they do with substance abuse, they call their sponsor, right? Sometimes you need a sponsor.
Right. Don't go over there.
That's right. Don't do it. Don't call. That's right.
Let us sponsor you. Don't do it. Don't go over there again.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
So.
And I wanted to ask that question because, we have a variety of different people looking at this program, and it also touches on the different relationships that are chronicled in this book. So you have people who are in unhealthy relationships, toxic, some who are in abusive relationships. And so we wanted to just touch on a little bit of all of those, making unhealthy decisions as it relates to your sexual behavior. And then being abused and molested or raped where you didn't have a choice. So the book touches on all of those aspects of women's lives and their stories. But the great thing is all of the stories are triumphant.
Yes.
So we end on that note. So let's talk a little bit about the triumph as we wrap this up. And I can't believe the time is going so fast.
It goes really fast.
Yeah.
Well, that's really fast.
I can't believe this.
Wow.
So let's talk about some of the triumphs of the ladies, the stories that you've chronicled.
Yeah, well, in each of the stories in the book, each of the women basically are saying they wish, they have regrets. Each of the stories, though, represents someone that I know. And I put little twists and turns to them. And so what you find is that people are able to recover. That's the beauty of it. With counseling, with support, with understanding who you are and whose you are, people can come out of this. And even, a lot of the places that I've gone have not been ministry at all.
Absolutely.
And so even in that, people are becoming clear about their values, and they say, wow, they're beginning to identify their value or see their value as priceless. So here's an example. I say, when you go into Tiffany's, where is the most expensive item?
Absolutely.
Locked up behind the case.
Absolutely.
So they attach a value. So they don't allow you to just touch, right?
Absolutely.
So when we begin to see ourselves in that way, and so that's what's happening with many of the women, that they have begun to define their value as priceless. And when they begin to look at, like a car, I treat my things better than I treat my body. Are you serious? Wait a minute. I need to rethink this. I'm spending all this money and I won't let somebody put their hands all in my hair, but I'll let them touch my vagina. No, I need to do something different. So that's one of the greatest things that I've seen. Women are beginning to shift. It's also been really powerful that women are having generational conversations. Women have said that their grandmother and their mother and the daughters are having conversations together to begin to look at how they can break some of the generational curses. Grandmothers are talking to daughters. All kinds of people are having conversations. And as a result, they're opening up and having these honest dialogue that I believe is so important. That's the one thing that we weren't doing. And when you have a mother or an aunt or a sister now that you can come and say, well, you know what, this guy is trying to talk to me. Now you can get wisdom.
Yes.
Instead of just some information. You want wisdom.
Absolutely.
So I think those are some of the greatest things that I've seen that are really changing people's lives in ways that I could not have imagined.
Okay. Well, there you have it. So breathe, people. Everybody breathe. And we are just so excited that you joined us today. This time has gone by so quickly. But this is a very powerful book. I want to encourage you to get it. I want you to connect with Dr. Pam. She is a woman of integrity, a woman of wisdom, and a woman who will tell you the truth in her nice, soft way. But you want somebody like that who will tell you the truth. And so I want you to connect with her, Dr. Pam Love Manning. We're going to have this video up for people who may just want to view it over and over again. And we are praying that you'll get the courage that you need to get the help that you need and to have the conversation. One of the people who commented on the information that we were going to be talking about this book today, she just said, okay now. And I just chuckled, okay now, like, oh, wow. And so, this book, it should provoke you to conversation. It should provoke you to have the conversations about things that have happened to you so that it won't continue to happen in your family.
That's right.
So that you can be the one, the agent of transformation to change what has happened in the past.
Yes.
And so with that, gosh, I'm so sorry we got to end.
Thank you so much, though.
Yeah,
thank you for having me.
yeah.
It's been wonderful. It's gone by really fast, but I really appreciate the opportunity. And I just want to encourage your audience to just continue to support you. You're doing such wonderful work. I really do believe that, and I'm so grateful. And with this book, I hope that women will begin to have conversations. Women are getting free, and it's time for us to live free, not just talk about being free.
Absolutely.
And so dealing with the pain of our past, dealing with things that have happened, and helping other women to not have to live with some of the things that we've had to live with can be empowering.
Yeah, that's awesome stuff. So listen, I love that statement. Women are getting free. Whether you've noticed it or not, this is the time of the woman.
Yes.
Women are being raised up in some places and some positions of power.
Yes.
And so we want to be sure that we're able to utilize those positions of power in the most maximum way that we can.
That's right.
And that, of course, includes our spiritual being, in addition to our physical being, our emotional being, spiritually, all of that. We want it to be whole, and we want to be healed, and we want to be effective when we are finding ourselves in these powerful positions. So that's all today, folks. I know you are sitting there like, wow, we didn't even take a break because the time was just moving, and we wanted to have this conversation. So, Dr. Pam, thank you so very much.
You're very welcome.
And this is not the last you're going to be hearing about this book. I want to have some group conversations about it. So we're definitely going to be using this for book club at my job. I'm sure they're going to think I'm out to lunch, but hey, I'm one. I push the envelope. And so we're going to be having that, and we'll have you come in and talk. And I want to create some other spaces to have you come in and talk. And so with that, we always say you never know who you're going to meet on the Nicole Mason Show. I tell you, you never know what you're going to hear, but you know it's going to be something good for you. You know it's going to be something that's going to motivate you and inspire you, but most importantly, inform you. Yes. So join us next week, same time, same place, 4 to 5 p.m. God bless you. Peace.
This is not the time to get distracted. And this is not